Part 34. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 331. Chapter 331 Little Boy. Faced with Lu Yu, given Ruan Xiangluo's temperament, she would rather die than obey. Qin Suiyu had already imagined Ruan Xiangluo's fate. When Lu Yu heard this, he was determined to get the beauty. Now that he heard that the beauty was a genius in alchemy, he wanted to get Xiangluo even more. Such a beauty is of great use even if you don't keep it for yourself. If Yan Xiangluo really has such a strong talent for alchemy, as long as she behaves well, it is not impossible to keep her. If she refuses to drink wine as a penalty, then don't blame him for his ruthless methods. Qin Suiyu calmly observed the young master's expression, and said again at the right time, "If you haven't found anyone in these days, could she have gone inland?" This seemingly simple sentence reminded the young master that Yan Xiangluo might leave the border and go to the inner continent. Qin Suiyu will never allow Ruan Xiangluo to leave Lu Yu's scope of power. Only when Ruan Xiangluo falls into Lu Yu's hands will she have the chance to make her life worse than death. Lu Yu was indeed reminded. Although he was confident that if the search was carried out with such intensity, and because Yan Xiangluo's identity had not settled in any city, Yan Xiangluo would definitely not be able to leave the Twilight Continent without an identity tag, but he was also worried that there would be something unexpected happened. After all, someone who could come to the High Continent from the lower road at such a young age cannot be an ordinary person. Both his cultivation talent and his IQ are not low. He immediately arranged for people to use Xianxia to conduct inspections at various border entrances. This is the scene that Yan Xiangluo and Ji Zhozhong saw when they arrived at the border of Fengjia Pass. However, the two of them never expected to pass the level easily, let alone clear it immediately. They just went to Fengjia Pass to understand the situation first. Leaving aside the issue of identity, it takes time to refine the elixir for the 3 white eagles and obtain the Earth-type 5-element beads. At this time, the two of them were walking in Fengjia town. Although it is only a town, because it is a border clearance place, there are many people coming in and out. Therefore, Fengjia town is larger and more prosperous than other towns. There are many inns and restaurants for accommodation. Various merchants and shops have a dazzling array of goods. Some of the local specialties from the mainland are sold here. There are also several shops for buying medicinal materials and elixirs. You can tell from the expressions of the people coming and going that they are from the inner continent. People from the inner continent have a hint of arrogance on their faces. Thinking that they still needed 2 medicinal materials, the two of them went to each medicinal shop to inquire, but found that neither of them had these 2 medicinal materials. Everyone's rhetoric is the same. These 2 medicines are necessary for refining the promotion pill. They are 2 of the rarest medicines. They are not easy to collect. They will be bought every time they are in stock. If they want it, there are only 3 ways. The first method is to stay at the medicine shop and capture it as soon as it is found. However, this method requires luck. There is more than one person squatting at the door, so the price on the spot is high. The second way is to go to the bounty hunter hall to post a mission, and a bounty hunter will take the order. However, the price will be much higher than buying it in a medicine shop. After all, bounty hunters risk their lives to collect medicine. The third option is to pick it yourself if you are really in a hurry. As an alchemist, who doesn't know the medicinal materials? In fact, it sounds like you are anxious, but the implicit meaning is that you don't have enough money. For Yan Xiangluo, if it is not possible, she really has to collect the medicine herself, which saves both time and wealth. After hearing the cost of buying 2 medicinal plants, Yan Xiangluo said that she was now poor. Just when Yan Xiangluo started to think about going into the mountains to collect herbs, a little boy wearing dirty clothes stopped her. Ji Zhozhong narrowed his eyes. The little boy, Yan Xiangluo, might not have noticed it, but he had discovered it long ago. He had been following them secretly since they entered the first medicine shop. The little boy asked in a low voice, "Sir, do you want these two medicinal materials, Shenglingguo and Ningzuko?" Yanxiangluo glanced at him and said, "Yes." The little boy's eyes burst with hope. "Then you must be alchemists, right?" Yanxiangluo nodded, "I am an alchemist." The light in the little boy's eyes became brighter. "I have the Holy Spirit fruit. Can you help me save my grandfather? The Holy Spirit fruit will be the reward for saving my grandfather, okay?" The little boy's tone was urgent and hopeful, and he stared at Yanxiangluo without blinking, for fear that she would not agree. Yanxiangluo glanced at Jija Kong. Although her life experience in another life had made her accustomed to intrigues, those were fights between people from families at the top of their power. Yanxiangluo didn't have much experience in this kind of life when traveling outside. Even after her soul returned, she went out to practice, but rarely had contact with people. Just like the little boy in front of her, she couldn't see any problems, but it didn't mean there were no problems, so she looked at Jija's Hong. She doesn't understand Jija Kong. Jija's Hong felt very good when he received the trusting look from his beloved girl. He looked at the little boy and asked, "How can we trust you?" When the little boy heard this, his whole body exuded an aura of hope. The fact that the other party did not reject him meant that as long as he trusted them, they would help him save his grandfather. "I can make an oath," the little boy swears as soon as he finishes speaking. Jija's Hong stopped him. "The oath can indeed restrain you, but it cannot restrain others." The little boy looked at Jija's Hong in confusion, but Yanxiangluo understood what he meant. If the little boy was a trap set by others, even if the little boy made a vow, he would not be the one to take action, and God would not punish him. "Then how can I, the young master, trust me?" The little boy was very smart. Although he had doubts in his heart and made the oath, he could not reassure the two young masters, but he quickly found the problem and asked directly. A ray of light flashed across Jija Kong's eyes. "This child is actually smart and clever. What price can you pay to save your grandfather?" Jija's Hong asked. The little boy was stunned for a moment, bit his lip and thought for a while. "As long as you don't do anything that violates the laws of heaven, any price is fine. Violating the laws of heaven will be obliterated by heaven. It is much more terrible than death, but it will really disappear." Jijudian nodded and asked, "How old are you?" The little boy didn't expect Jija's Hong that you would ask him such a question, so he instinctively replied, 9 years old. "Who else is there in your family besides you and grandpa?" Jija's Hong then asked. The little boy shook his head. "My grandpa and I are the only ones left at home." Jija's Hong nodded with satisfaction. "I will give you the next loyalty mystic text, and I will unlock it for you after our transaction is completed. If you can accept this condition, we can proceed with the transaction." The little boy nodded without hesitation. "Yes, but you have to cure my grandpa before I will give you the fruit of life." End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 332. Chapter 332. The Love Between Grandfather and Grandson. Jija's Hong said, "This is what it should be, but we need to take a look at the medicinal materials first." The little boy hesitated for a moment. "Then you must swear that you will never steal my medicine until my grandfather is cured." "Okay," Jija Kong agreed happily. He did this just to reassure each other. He and Yanxiangluo were already in trouble. Any slightest mistake could put them in a desperate situation. It was always right to be cautious. He had clearly observed when talking to the little boy that the little boy did not lie. Jija's Hong is still very confident in his eyesight. Jija's Hong gave the little boy a secret message of loyalty, and the two of them also made an oath in accordance with the little boy's request. The little boy breathed a sigh of relief and pointed to the west and said to them, "Come with me. My family lives in the west of the town. Medicinal materials cannot be shown to them on the street, otherwise, It is not certain whose medicinal materials belong to them. The two of them followed the little boy towards his house. About a quarter of an hour later, she arrived in front of a courtyard gate. The courtyard was in a remote location, but it was quite large. Yan Xianglou looked at the courtyard wall, and it didn't look like a poor family. Look at the clothes the little boy is wearing. Although they are dirty, the material is still good. How could it end up in such a situation? The little boy pushed open the courtyard door and stood aside to invite the two of them in. The etiquette was natural and not imitated. Ruan Xiangluo's apricot eyes flashed. This rule cannot be taught by ordinary people. Entering the small courtyard, I found that it was very clean. The layout of the small courtyard also showed that the owner had great taste. Not counting the three of them, except for a breath in the main room, there was no one else in the entire courtyard. This also shows that there are no servants in this family. Even so, Yan Xianglou felt that the little boy's family was definitely not an ordinary family. She has never sensed any spiritual energy fluctuations in the little boy. In this case, usually either he has not tried to awaken his spiritual roots or he has tried and is not qualified to practice. There are many ordinary people in the higher continent, so Yan Xianglou doesn't feel surprised when she meets people who can't practice. I'm just a little curious. The family situation of the grandfather and grandson should be good. What happened to them that led to such a situation? The little boy closed the courtyard door, and then with a thought, a brocade box appeared in his hand. He opened the brocade box carefully. As expected, there was a spirit ascension fruit inside. It looked to be quite old, at least over 1,000 years old. Yan Xianglou nodded. The little boy kept looking at Yan Xianglou and felt completely relieved when he saw that her expression was still calm and not greedy at all. He put away the brocade box and invited the two of them to the main bedroom. The little boy knocked on the door gently. "Grandpa, I asked the alchemist to come and show it to you." An old man's voice came from inside the house. "Xiaohao, Grandpa is fine. There is no need to ask anyone to check on him." The little boy's tears immediately flowed down his face, and he said with a cry in his voice, "Grandpa, just take a look, Xiaohao is scared." The old man spoke very weakly, and his voice was as loud as that of a mosquito. If it weren't for their cultivation, they wouldn't be able to hear anyone speaking, but the little boy could hear it clearly. Yan Xianglou and Ji Zhizhong looked at each other and both noticed something special about the little boy. This boy named Xiaohao has no spiritual energy fluctuations in his body, but his ears are so strong. There is only one possibility, that is, he has strong mental energy and is born with it. If you can practice this, you must be a genius. The old man in the room sighed, "Please let someone in." The little boy immediately raised his sleeves to wipe the tears from his face, opened the door and said to the two of them, "You two gentlemen, please come in." Yan Xianglou went in first, followed by Ji Zhizhong. Along the way, Ji Zhizhong had already covered the entire courtyard and I checked the room with my spiritual sense and made sure that there were no formations or barriers. As soon as Yan Xianglou entered the room, she saw the old man lying on the bed. He is said to be an old man, but he actually looks like a middle-aged man, but his face is very haggard, and he is a bit frighteningly thin. The man's age is not surprising. After all, people in the higher continents have a long lifespan. The little boy is only 9 years old. Normal people can marry and have children at the age of 18. At this age, his grandfather is less than 5 years old. 10 years old. This age is not considered old at all in the context of senior continental monks. Some people who are dedicated to cultivation have not yet married and had children at this age. Seeing Ren Yang Xianglou, she made an inference about his condition, but she still needed to check his pulse to see the specific situation. Xiaohao quickly ran to the bed and said, "Grandpa, he is an alchemist. He promised me that he will cure Grandpa." The man looked at his grandson with an apologetic expression. Did you use the medicinal materials that Grandpa left you as medical fees? Xiaohao's voice suddenly became much softer. Although the voice was small, it had a hint of crying. Grandpa, you are the only relative I have. I don't want anything, as long as Grandpa lives. Although he didn't answer directly, the old man knew what he meant. After all, their grandfather and grandson had nothing else of value. The man spoke very hard, and looked at his grandson's appearance and sighed helplessly. The grandson was too young and too easy to be deceived. Things were already like this. No matter whether these two people were liars or not, he couldn't change anything now, so he might as well just let your grandson be happy. Although he is now as weak as an ordinary person, he can also sense that the cultivation aura of these two young people is very strong and should be above the clan level. It's okay for such a person to be only interested in their medicinal materials. If he has other thoughts, he really can't protect his grandson. We can only take one step at a time and hope that God will see that he has never done anything harmful in his life and leave his grandson as his only bloodline. Stop crying. Why don't you invite people over to show Grandpa? Xiaohao immediately wiped his tears and said to Yan Xiangluo, Sir, please show it to my grandpa. Yan Xiangluo nodded and walked to the bedside, asking Xiaohao to take out his grandfather's hand from the quilt. She clearly saw that the man's hand was so thin that only skin and bones were left. The hand looked even bigger than his face. Scary. Yan Xiangluo felt his pulse calmly and relaxed her hand after a moment. Xiaohao looked at Yu Xiangluo in shock. Although he was young, he also knew that not all alchemists have medical skills. Most alchemists can only refine elixirs and can only treat fixed injuries and diseases, but what he saw in front of him was the young master is actually diagnosing the pulse, which only a doctor can do. Infinite hope suddenly rose in Xiaohao's heart. The young master is an alchemist and also knows medical skills. Grandpa is really saved this time. As long as Grandpa is alive, he has relatives and is not an orphan, and he has hope for his future life. Looking at Yan Xiangluo with burning eyes, he wanted to know how she could save her grandfather. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 333. Chapter 333 Unable to practice. It's poison. It's been 3 months. Although some of the poison has been forced out, this poison is too overbearing. It is constantly devouring your spiritual power and corroding your danshan. Your spiritual roots have withered. If it weren't for your cultivation, Gao, I'm afraid you won't be able to survive for 3 months. If you don't get treatment, you can live for up to 7 days. Yan Xiangluo looked at the man on the bed and told him the results of her diagnosis. The man on the bed looked at Yan Xiangluo in shock. He was right at all. He originally thought that these two people were here to cheat on medicinal materials, but now it seems that they are really capable. Why doesn't he suspect that the two are enemies? The reason is very simple. If the enemy doesn't have to bother so much, his cultivation level is almost exhausted. The little grandson has not awakened his spiritual roots and started practicing. If it is the enemy, he can solve it directly. Their grandfather and grandson. Listen to the young master, can my disease be cured? The man on the bed also felt a glimmer of hope in his heart. The grandson is too young and has not yet awakened his spiritual roots and started practicing cultivation due to some reasons. Even if he survives, without anyone to help him awaken his spiritual roots, he may never be able to practice cultivation in this life. Without his own protection, it is unknown whether he can survive, let alone the 0 year of awakening and cultivation. If he can survive and his grandson has someone to rely on, he can also watch his grandson grow up and pass on the blood of his family. Yes, Yan Xiangluo said only one word, but her firm tone made the man on the bed tremble with excitement. He knew very well that his Danshan had been poisoned to the point of death, but as long as he lived, there was always hope, right? As long as he had the life pill, he could recover his cultivation, and the safety of his grandfather and grandson would be guaranteed. Yan Xiongluo said quickly, "Control your emotions and don't get excited anymore. Your body can't stand such a big mood swing." Hearing this, the man immediately forced himself to calm down his emotions, because he already felt that his body could not bear such emotional fluctuations. "Young master, if you can save my life, you will be the reborn benefactor of our grandfather and grandson. We, our grandfather and grandson, will definitely repay the young master's great kindness." Yan Xiongluo shook her head, "That's not necessary. Your grandson and I are just a deal. He has the spirit ascension fruit that I need, and I have the medical skills he needs. I save you and he gives me the spirit ascension fruit, and we the two don't owe each other." The man on the bed obviously did not expect that Yan Xiongluo was such a principled person. There are not many people in this world who have such a moral bottom line. He was deeply moved in his heart. God had finally left a way for their grandfather and grandson to survive. "Then I have to thank you, Master. No matter how rare the spirit ascension fruit is, it cannot be compared to Master's kindness in saving me." In fact, what he wanted to say was that it was not as good as Master's character, but he could just keep this in mind and there was no need to say it out loud. "When you get better, you can repay this young master with the opportunity." Yan Xiongluo took out the silver needle, which was given to her by Jizhong. While disinfecting the silver needle, she said, "I also need the condensed pearl grass. If you can get it, we can also conduct other transactions you need." What Yan Xiongluo was thinking was that since they had the spirit ascension fruit, although they didn't know how they got it, they might have a way to get the pearl grass. Even if she didn't say anything, it wouldn't matter. The man on the bed's eyes lit up. "Master, are you going to refine the promotion pill? Spirit ascending grass is required for many elixir recipes, but if ascending spirit fruit and pearl condensing grass are put together, they must be refining the promotion elixir, and the alchemist who can refine the promotion elixir is at least a level 5 alchemist. The young master in front of me looks like he is only a teenager, but he is actually a 5th level alchemist. His talent in alchemy is quite scary. Perhaps God was moved by the filial piety of the little grandson that made him meet the young master to save his life. Although I don't have the Ningzu grass in my hand, I have a way to get it," the man said. "Since the young master needs the Ningzu grass, he will get it for him when he is ready." Yan Xiongluo's expression was still very calm. "I'll detoxify you first." After saying that, she asked Xiao Hao to go to bed and untie his grandfather's clothes. She was going to give his grandfather acupuncture. Xiao Hao climbed up onto the bed nimbly, neatly untied his grandfather's clothes, then sat on the side of the bed and watched Yan Xiongluo. "Don't disturb me while I'm doing the acupuncture." Xiao Hao nodded immediately and stepped back inside, saying that he would be very good and would never disturb her from giving her grandfather acupuncture. Yu Xiongluo raised her hand, as if she didn't even need to look, and in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen silver needles were pierced near the man's heart. Looking at Yan Xiongluo's movements, Xiao Hao opened his mouth in surprise. He had also seen doctors treating people, but he had never seen doctors give people acupuncture. However, he had read in ancient books that only those with superb medical skills, only people know how to use silver needles. Although it was the first time for him to see a doctor perform acupuncture, he could see that Yan Xiongluo was very proficient in acupuncture. It was obvious that the silver needle technique was very strong. Xiao Hao looked at Yan Xiongluo with burning eyes. The envy in his eyes was not concealed at all. Yan Xiongluo glanced at him. "Do you like medical skills?" Xiao Hao was stunned for a moment, then nodded, but the light in his eyes dimmed. "I can't awaken my spiritual roots. The implication is that no matter how much I like it, I am not qualified to learn it." Yan Xiongluo glanced at Xiao Hao. Maybe her grandma was the only one who loved her in her other life. Seeing Xiaohao, who was dependent on her grandfather, in front of her was like seeing her former self, and she felt a little pity for him. It will take a quarter of an hour for the silver needle to be removed. Come here and let me show you. Yan Xiongluo waved to Xiaohao, who was in the bed. Xiaohao's eyes lit up, he resisted the impulse in his heart, and looked at his grandpa. When he saw his grandpa nodded slightly, he carefully got off the bed without touching his grandpa during the whole process. Getting off the bed, Xiaohao stood in front of Yan Xiongluo, raised his head and looked at Yan Xiongluo. Master, I have no other reward to give you. The implication is that if you want to see a doctor for me, but I can't afford the consultation fee, do you still want to see me? Yan Xiongluo didn't say that she didn't want him to pay for the medical consultation. That would hurt a child's self-esteem too much. You can owe it to me. You can pay it to me later when you have the strength. The light in Xiaohao's eyes suddenly burst out. Okay. Yan Xiongluo smiled and said to him, don't resist, I want to use my spiritual sense to find out what's going on in your danshan. Yes, Xiaohao nodded. His grandfather had checked his danshan in this way before, but he also said that he would not let others see his danshan. But at this time, he trusted Yu Xiongluo and did not ask his grandfather's opinion. Yu Xiongluo enveloped Xiaohao with her spiritual consciousness, checked Xiaohao's body from head to toe, and finally stopped in his danshan to carefully check the situation in his danshan. There is no other problem with his body, the problem does appear in his danshan. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 334. Chapter 334. I only believe in you. The danshan of a normal person is milky white and bright. Xiaohao's danshan was red, and when Yan Xiongluo's consciousness looked into it, she felt a strong wave of heat coming over her. This is obviously a fire spiritual root, and it is very powerful. Yan Xiongluo asked Xiaohao, have most of the people in your family awakened their fire spiritual roots? Xiaohao nodded, my grandfather, father, and uncle all have fire spiritual roots. Yan Xiongluo asked again, do your family's ancestors inherit fire-based skills? Xiaohao shook his head, I don't know. Looking at the grandfather lying on the bed, Yan Xiongluo also looked at the man on the bed. You don't need to speak, just blink. The man on the bed blinked immediately. Yan Xiongluo smiled and rubbed Xiaohao's head. Xiaohao is a child with great fortune. It doesn't matter if his spiritual roots are awakened later. Xiaohao is a little puzzled. Children awaken their spiritual roots and start practicing when they are 5 years old at the latest. He is 9 years old and still cannot awaken his spiritual roots. They all say that he is a waste. How can he have great fortune? The man on the bed's eyes lit up. He knew that since Yan Xiongluo said this, there must be a way to awaken Xiaohao's spiritual roots. Sir, can I awaken my spiritual roots and practice? Am I a waste? Xiaohao looked at Yu Xiongluo with bright eyes. You are not a waste. Not only are you not a waste, you are also a great genius. Your spiritual roots are very strong and are not easily awakened. When I cure your grandfather, I will awaken your spiritual roots. Yan Xiongluo looked at the hope bursting in front of her eyes. The little boy felt the same way. In another life, she also longed for a healthy body, but was disappointed again and again. Later, she learned medical skills on her own. The higher her medical skills, the more desperate she became, because she knew that she would never have a healthy body in this life. Body, the light in her eyes was completely extinguished at that time. Every day she lived after that was a blessing to her, but it was meaningless because her life path had come to an end. But even so, she did not give up hope of living and struggled to live until she was 13. Although she passed away with regret, she did not regret it because she had exhausted all her strength. Had he not returned to his true form, he would have actually died. Therefore, after knowing the situation of the little boy named Xiaohao, she was willing to help him, just because maybe she was the only person in his life who could pull him out of the darkness. She was not stingy with the hope that she had never had before given to him. Xiaohao was very excited. My name is Qi Hao. I will never forget the great kindness you have shown me in my life. As long as it does not violate the rules of heaven, I am willing to do anything for you. Yan Xiangluo's eyes fell softly on Qi Hao, and she stretched out her hand to rub his head. You are too careful and too simple-minded. Don't make promises to anyone easily. No matter how great the favor is, there is always a chance to repay it. There is no need to spend your whole life for any favor. Qi Hao's big eyes suddenly flashed. Unlike when he met him on the street before, his eyes were timid, uncertain, and did not want to give up. At this time, Qi Hao's eyes had a light that had never been seen before. Apart from Grandpa, I only believe in you, Qi Hao said firmly. The young master in front of him appeared when his life was in despair. He was not bullied because he was a child who could not cultivate. He made a fair deal with him. Not only did he save his grandfather, but he also helped him awaken his spiritual roots. His stormy world suddenly became clear, and Yuan Xiangluo was the salvation of his life. Everything he said was true, and he was really willing to do anything for her throughout his life. Ji Zhozhong has been watching from the sidelines. He guessed that Yan Xiangluo left his parents at a young age and made a living on his own. He felt pity for Qi Hao when he saw that he and his grandfather were dependent on each other. Although I didn't guess the reason why she was so good to Qi Hao, I had a pretty good guess. Ji Zhozhong could also see that Yan Xiangluo really liked Qi Hao. A ray of light flashed across his phoenix eyes. The fate between people is so wonderful. Yan Xiangluo was Qi Hao's salvation, so what about Qi Hao? He is not here to fill the void in Yan Xiangluo's soul. It's time to start the needle. Yan Xiangluo calculated that the time was up and came to the bedside. Qi Hao was in a better mood than ever before. He felt that his body was much lighter and he stood obediently beside Yuan Xiangluo. Although Qi Hao's grandfather has been unable to speak, he is also very excited because he can only desperately control his emotions during detoxification. Through the acupuncture applied by Yuan Xiangluo, he knew that the medical skills of the young master in front of him were not ordinary. In fact, his poison was incurable, but the young master could save him, which was equivalent to bringing him back to life. Therefore, Yuan Xiangluo said that he believed in awakening his spiritual roots for her grandson. It has been 3 months. In these 3 months, their grandparents and grandson have experienced hell-like sufferings on earth and lost all their close relatives. He thought that God was going to destroy their family, but he did not expect that they would meet the noble man in front of them. Young master. Xiao Hao was so excited as a child to be grateful to him, let alone an adult like him. Therefore, he didn't think there was anything wrong with Qi Hao saying that he was willing to do anything for the young master. Even he was willing. It can be seen that although this young man is very talented and capable, he is very principled in his actions and is a person with a moral bottom line. The needle fell slower than the needle application. Each silver needle rose slowly. When the last silver needle left Grandpa Qi Hao's body, a smell suddenly surged up in his throat. Yan Xiangluo naturally knew what was going to happen next, so she put away the needle and pulled Qi Hao away. At the same time, Qi Hao's grandfather spurted thick black blood from his mouth, covering the quilt, bed curtains, and the ground. That's not all, he spurted out 3 big mouthfuls of black blood one after another before he stopped. Grandpa, what's wrong with you? Qi Hao suddenly cried in fright. He thought Grandpa was going to die. Yan Xiangluo patted Qi Hao on the shoulder and said, your grandfather's poison has been discharged. Hurry up and get your grandfather a glass of water to rinse his mouth. Qi Hao finally woke up from his sadness. It turned out that this was detoxification, and he felt a little embarrassed. Embarrassedly, he raised his sleeves and wiped the tears from his eyes, quickly ran to the table, poured a glass of water, brought it to his grandfather, and carefully fed his grandfather to drink water and rinse his mouth. In my heart, I admired Yan Xiangluo's superb medical skills even more. After rinsing his mouth, Chi Hao's grandfather felt a little stronger and his voice became louder. He opened his mouth and said, "Thank you so much, Master, for saving my life." Yan Xiangluo said to Grandpa Chi Hao, "The poison has just been removed and I can't restore your spiritual roots yet. You take a recovery pill first, and I will restore your spiritual roots tomorrow." End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 335. Chapter 335. You are so awesome. Both the grandfather and grandson were shocked. They thought that the deal they reached with Yan Xiangluo was just to save people, and they never thought that they could heal his spiritual roots. Chi Hao had no idea that his grandfather's spiritual roots had been destroyed to the point of being almost useless. Only after listening to Yan Xiangluo's words did he realize how serious his grandfather's injuries were. Hateful in my heart are those who harmed them, especially those who poisoned Grandpa, and I clenched my little fists tightly. Chi Hao's grandfather came to his senses and said quickly, "Master, is there a way to heal my spiritual roots?" Yan Xiangluo nodded, "It's very simple. A spiritual elixir can solve it. The Shenling pill and the Shenying pill have similar functions, except that one is used to restore the spiritual roots and the other is used to restore the Yuanying. It is relatively more expensive than the Shenying Dan. The medicinal materials required in it are almost all rare medicinal materials in the world, and they are also difficult to refine. May I take the liberty of asking the master's level as an alchemist?" Grandpa Chi Hao hesitated before asking. He felt that he might have underestimated the ability of the young master in front of him before. Since the young master said that his spiritual roots can be cured, he must be very clear about the state of his spiritual roots. Judging from his own experience, his spiritual roots require at least a 6th level spiritual elixir to revive them. If he wants to restore his spiritual roots to the original state, it requires at least a 7th level spiritual elixir. No matter how stupid he is, he will never misjudge the young master's age. He will definitely not be more than 18 years old. At such a young age, no matter how talented he is in alchemy, he cannot be a 6th grade alchemist, right? Yan Xiangluo glanced at Grandpa Chi Hao and said, "As long as you know that I can restore your spiritual roots to the original state." Grandpa Chi Hao was extremely shocked. He looked at the calm-looking Yan Xiangluo and knew that he was not talking big words. I thought to myself that he could not be a 7th grade alchemist. Maybe he had a 7th grade elixir that could not be refined by himself. Thinking about it this way, I feel that I guessed it right, otherwise how could such a monster genius have no information at all on the continent? It is impossible for that family to hide such a genius from being exposed. Even Yun's Hang Palace can't do it. I'm Chi Changhe. If the young master has any use for our grandfather and grandson in the future, just ask him, and we will definitely not refuse. Although Chi Changhe has discharged the poison, his body is still very weak and he cannot stand up to salute, but his attitude is still the same. Yan Xiangluo did not refuse, nodded, took out a recovery pill and handed it to Chi Changhe. Chi Changhe took the elixir and brought it to his mouth. Suddenly he was stunned. There were actually golden lines on the elixir. He looked carefully and found that it was indeed golden lines and they were very even. Even if he is not an alchemist, he knows that the elixirs with golden lines are of perfect quality. And he hasn't figured out what grade this recovery pill is. Because the highest grade of the elixir he had used and seen was the 6th grade, he did not see that the grade of elixir must be above the 6th grade. Oh my God, he never thought that one day he would be able to take pills above the 6th grade. Just now, Yan Xiangluo said that he could heal his spiritual roots. He thought he had a 7th grade spiritual enhancement pill, but now he also took out a 7th grade recovery pill and gave it to him. He doubted his previous thoughts. After being stunned for a moment, Xianxia carefully put the elixir into his mouth. The elixir melted in his mouth and slid down his throat into his stomach. Then a warm current spread throughout his body, and he suddenly felt that his body was much stronger. Qiao watched his grandfather's face turn rosy. "Young master, you are so awesome." Qiao didn't know what words to use to describe his admiration for Yan Xiangluo, so he could only express his thoughts by saying "You are so awesome." Yan Xiangluo smiled and rubbed Qiao's head. "You will also be very powerful in the future." "I also want to be as powerful as the young master in the future," Qiao said with bright eyes, as if he had found his goal in life. Yan Xiangluo laughed and said, "I'm not that great." "No, you are very powerful," Qiao said stubbornly. In his mind, Yan Xiangluo, who can save his grandfather and enable him to awaken his spiritual roots and start practicing cultivation, is the most powerful person in the world. Yan Xiangluo didn't argue with the child. When he started practicing and saw more, he would know that she was really not that powerful. At this time, she didn't know that the most powerful person in Qiao's heart had never changed in his life. Ji Zhong, who had been silent at this time, said, "We just arrived here today, can we stay here for a few days?" Although Qiao really wanted them to live in his home, he did not agree hastily. Instead, he looked at his grandfather. This move made Ji Zhong nodded secretly. This child was determined. Xianxia immediately said, "It's an honor for us that our two benefactors can stay at home for a few days. However, our family is lonely and we have no servants to take care of us. If our two benefactors don't mind, feel free to stay for as long as they want." In fact, even if they wanted this courtyard, he would give it to them without hesitation. A courtyard is incomparable to the life-saving grace. The value of the spirit ascension fruit is not as valuable as a spirit ascension pill, not to mention that he has already eaten one person. A recovery pill is enough, and the deal with them is a loss-making deal. "Then I'm sorry," Ji Zhong said in a natural tone. "It is much safer to live here than in an inn, and Yan Xiangluo will naturally not object. The happiest person is Qiao. His most admired benefactor will stay in their house for a few days, and he can see his benefactor every day. Please tell me your surname, sir. We, my grandfather and my grandson, must know who our benefactor is," Xianxia asked again. Yu Xiangluo glanced at Qiao and said, not wanting to deceive him, "My surname is Yu. The rest is not said." Xianxia wisely did not ask any more questions. "Sir, there are other courtyards in the courtyard. You can choose the rooms in them and live wherever you want. Let Xiaohao clean them up. Yan Xiangluo has no habit of bossing around children, we can do it ourselves." Xianxia was a little embarrassed to speak, but when it came to whether his grandson could cultivate, he still asked shamelessly and cryptically, "Master, you just said that he can help Xiaohao awaken his spiritual roots. What do you need me to do?" Yan Xiangluo shook her head. "When your spiritual roots recover tomorrow, I will help Xiaohao awaken his spiritual roots. Xiaohao's fire spiritual root talent is too strong and cannot be awakened by the normal spiritual root awakening method. I will place one tomorrow. The formation will help him awaken his spiritual roots. When the time comes, you can personally protect him." Xianxia knew that Yan Xiangluo could indeed help his grandson awaken his spiritual roots. He was happy and at the same time shocked. After all, being able to let him protect the law means that tomorrow he will recover most of his cultivation. He will also set up formations according to the young master's wishes. In other words, this young master is not only an alchemist but also an formation master. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 336. Chapter 336 Future Master. Oh my God, What kind of evil person did their grandfather and grandson meet? Cultivation, alchemy, formations, how did he master all three to become so strong? After all, human energy and time are limited. He doesn't know yet whether Yan Xianglou is a Xuanhuan master, otherwise he would be even more shocked. Ignoring his shock, Yan Xianglou said to Qi Hao, "Xiao Hao, your grandfather has just finished detoxification. Although he has taken the recovery pill, he still needs to rest. Please take us to see the room." Qi Hao immediately told his grandfather to have a good rest, and then took Yan Xianglou and Ji Zhizhong out. This courtyard is very big, and there are several smaller courtyards. Young master, you can live wherever you want. Qi Hao pointed to the courtyard. In fact, he really wanted to let Yan Xiang stay in the room next to him. Yan Xianglou said to Ji Zhizhong, "Where do you want to live?" Ji Zhizhong pointed to a small courtyard near the main courtyard and said, "Let's live in that courtyard." This courtyard is closest to the main courtyard where Qi Changhe and his grandson live. It is convenient to come here when necessary. It is also a separate small courtyard, which is convenient and quiet. Qi Hao was a little regretful that Ji Zhizhong did not choose to live in the main courtyard, but he also knew that this was because people were following the rules and that guests would stay in other people's main courtyards. If Grandpa hadn't been worried about his safety, he wouldn't be able to live in the main courtyard. When Grandpa asked about their surnames before, "Young master, you only mentioned her surname, not her first name, nor the name of the other young master." Grandpa didn't ask again. Qi Hao was also very smart, knowing that they didn't want to tell, so he just talked to Yan Xianglou directly. Qi Hao led the two of them to the yard next to them. The 9-year-old child was already very efficient at work. He fetched water and rags and was about to start cleaning the room. He was stopped by Yan Xianglou. "You go and accompany your grandpa, we can do it ourselves." Seeing that Yan Xianglou insisted on putting down the rag, Qi Hao hesitated and said, "I don't know how to cook." Yan Xianglou was stunned for a moment, and immediately understood what he meant. She couldn't entertain them because she couldn't cook. Qi Hao felt it was rude, so he said, "I can." Qi Hao was even more embarrassed. "You are our patrons. The implication is that you are either a guest or a benefactor. It makes no sense for the host to let the guest cook for himself without cooking for the host. Now I'll cook for you. When you learn to cook later, you can cook for me." Yan Xianglou looked at the awkward little boy and said with a smile, "Okay, I will definitely learn to cook." Qi Hao immediately became energetic. The benefactor's words like this mean that he does not exclude you from interacting with him in the future, and that's good. He will eventually grow up, and there will be opportunities to repay his benefactor. Qi Hao, who can only throw rice and water into a pot and cook it now, never imagined that one day his cooking skills would be famous all over the world. And Yan Xianglou never expected that her words of comfort would create a master chef. Ji Zhizhong said that he would clean the house and asked Yan Xianglou to go to the kitchen to cook. Qi Hao happily took Yan Xianglou to the kitchen. Although the kitchen was full of kitchen utensils, there was almost nothing to eat except rice. Qi Hao obviously just realized that even if Yan Xianglou could cook, he didn't have anything to cook at home. He looked at her cautiously and said, "I only have rice at home." Yan Xianglou has already seen that there is indeed only rice in the kitchen, not much, only half a bag. There is still a small half tank of water in the water tank on the side. She understood that these days, the child probably just boiled rice with water and drank porridge with his grandfather. For such a young child, he couldn't get water from the well in the yard. He didn't know how long he had used the water in the water tank. Yan Xianglou rubbed Qi Hao's head. "I have both. You go take care of your grandpa. I'll call you when the meal is ready." It is not strange at all that a noble man can cook and carries rice and vegetables with him. The world of a child is simple. Yu Xiang cleans the water tank neatly, fills 2 more buckets of water and pours them into the water tank, cleans the pot, steams the rice first, takes out a few vegetables from the storage ring, and starts washing and cutting them. In less than half an hour, she had prepared 4 dishes and 1 soup. "Chi Hao, it's time to eat." Yan Xianglou stood at the door of the kitchen and shouted. Although her voice was not loud, she used spiritual power. Chi Hao, who was accompanying his grandfather in the main room, heard it and ran out happily. Chi Changhe felt a little sad when he saw his grandson's cheerful figure. His grandson had not been so happy in 3 months. Yan Xianglou handed Chi Hao the vegetable porridge prepared for Chi Changhe. "You send your grandfather's meal first, and we will eat when you come back." Chi Hao was so moved that young master Yu actually made porridge for his grandfather. The porridge was much more delicious than what he made. "Thank you," Chi Hao said with a choked voice. Since the incident at home, it was the first time someone was so kind to them, which made his young heart filled with hatred feel warm. "I was so moved that I wanted to cry again, but I thought that I was a man, and men would not shed tears easily. I had cried several times today, and I couldn't cry anymore. It was too embarrassing. Therefore, although my voice was a little choked, the tears did not fall." After thanking him, he quickly brought the porridge to Grandpa. Yu Xianglou used the sound transmission stone to call Ji Zhong to come over for dinner. When Ji Zhong came over, Chi Hao also came back, still holding an empty bowl in his hand. It was obvious that he came back after waiting for his grandfather to finish the porridge. The 3 of them sat down at the table in the kitchen. Chi Hao said, "Why don't you go to the main room to eat?" Yu Xianglou said, "It's too far. Carrying it back and forth is troublesome and wastes time." Chi Hao has been eating in the kitchen during this time, but he can't help it. In the past, the rules at home were very strict. If it hadn't been for a sudden disaster at home, he might never have the chance to eat in the kitchen or even enter kitchen. He was curious as to why Yan Xianglou and Ji Zhong, who in his eyes were like noble gentlemen, could cook and eat in the kitchen so naturally, without feeling at all that they were losing their status. Chi Hao's outlook on life opened a new door at this moment, and the rules that bound him were marginalized in his heart. However, even though he was curious, he didn't ask. He sat down and ate obediently. After just 1 bite, his eyes lit up. "It's so delicious." It was not because he had not eaten delicious food for a long time that he felt it tasted good, but because he had never eaten such delicious food before. These are obviously ordinary vegetables, they don't even have meat, so how could they be made so delicious by young Master Yu? Yan Xianglou explained, "I am an alchemist. When making alchemy, you need to control the heat well. The same goes for cooking. Different types of dishes require different heat levels. As long as you are familiar with their needs for heat and control the fire well, if you can bring out the best flavor of the food will naturally taste better." Chi Hao said in confusion, "I used to have alchemists in my family, but they didn't know how to cook." End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 337. Chapter 337 is all yours. Yan Xianglou choked, looked at Chi Hao's little eyes with obvious desire for knowledge, and said helplessly, "That's because they are stupid, they can't make alchemy well, how can they have time to learn to cook?" It was obvious that Yan Xianglou had said something perfunctory to him, but Chi Hao nodded solemnly, "That's true. None of them are as smart or powerful as Mr. Yu." Yan Xianglou twitched the corners of her mouth and closed her mouth wisely. She finally understood that she was now a godlike existence in Chi Hao's heart. If she continued to speak, she would feel that it was true and she would drift away. Ji Zhong's lips curled up with an imperceptible arc. This boy was able to make Luo happy. After dinner, Chi Hao insisted on washing the dishes. Washing the dishes was nothing for a 9-year-old child, so Yan Xianglou let him do it. Besides, wasn't the 9-year-old child doing all the cooking and washing dishes before she and Ji Zhong came? They are not Qihao or anything like that, so there is no need to pamper him. It was already evening when they arrived at the border, and it was already dark after dinner. Qihao went to accompany his grandfather. Yan Xiangluo and Ji Zhekong returned to the yard and were busy each other. Yan Xiangluo wanted to refine a spiritual elixir for Qi Changhe based on his spiritual roots, while Ji Zhekong continued to study the array. One night, the two of them were busy in their respective rooms, neither of them slept all night. After Yan Xiangluo refined the Shenling pill, she has been thinking about the method of refining the God-level pill. Yan Xiangluo, who had never encountered a bottleneck in her alchemy journey, finally encountered an obstacle. One night passed and she refined a lot of 9th grade elixirs, but she still had not crossed the threshold of God-level elixirs and had no clue at all. But she was not discouraged. God-level elixirs are the highest level for alchemists, but it is not so easy to achieve it with just one word of God. Otherwise, there would not be only one God-level alchemist that can be counted in the palm of a hand in the higher continent. Moreover, God-level elixirs can only be refined occasionally. Looking outside, it was already bright. She put the refined elixirs into bottles and jars, and went out to wash up and make breakfast. When Ji Zhekong came out of the room, he was holding a formation disc in his hand. This formation disc was not the one from Yan Xiangluo, but the one he refined himself. Feeling the scent of the fragrance falling in the kitchen of the main courtyard, I walked briskly. As soon as he arrived at the kitchen door, he saw the little tail Qihao following behind Yan Xiangluo. He narrowed his eyes and saw that this child was an eyesore today. He calmly put away the array tray and walked into the kitchen. Yan Xiangluo said to Qihao, "Send this elixir to your grandfather. He needs time to recover after taking the elixir. Don't disturb him. Come out and let's have breakfast." Qihao took the medicine bottle and ran out happily. Grandpa will regain his cultivation, and he will still be the powerful grandpa whom he admires. Yan Xiang looked at Qihao's back with a smile. Ji Zhekong looked at Qihao and then at Yan Xiangluo. Luo likes Qihao very much. Yan Xiangluo looked back and put the food on the table. Maybe it's because we have experienced a lot at a young age, and we feel like we are connected by the same fate. Ji Zhekong twitched the corner of his mouth. Why are they connected by fate? Qihao at least has a grandfather by his side. Although Luo has parents, they are not around. She has been living alone since she was 10 years old. In comparison, Luo is much more difficult than Qihao. However, Ji Zhekong would not say such revealing words. Qihao's fire spiritual roots are very strong. It seems that he is also very interested in alchemy. He is a good candidate for alchemy. Why don't Luo accept a disciple? After all, he is a talented child. It's not easy to encounter. Ji Zhekong didn't come up with this idea just now. He had it yesterday when he learned that Qihao had a fire element and was very interested in alchemy. Furthermore, since their family has such a rare medicinal material as Shenlinguo, and his grandfather still has a way to obtain Ningzi grass, it can be concluded that their family must have been dealing in medicinal materials in the past. Yu Xiangluo was stunned. She really hadn't thought about accepting a disciple. She is only 16 years old. Normal people at this age are still learning skills from their masters, but there are people who want to be apprentices. Although she liked Qihao very much, she thought that she had not yet found her parents and had no fixed place to live. And Qihao had his grandfather, so he could not let her follow him around the continent to take risks. She shook her head and said, "Following me will not only be dangerous, but you will also have to suffer the hardship of running around. Forget it." Ji Zhekong also knew that they would not be able to settle down for a while, and he also understood that masters and apprentices also need fate. If they really have the fate of master and apprentice, they would become master and apprentice without him telling them. Another point is that there is still hatred between Qi Changhe and his grandson. I don't know who they are provoking. They have enough troubles themselves. Although he is not someone who is afraid of trouble, there is no need to look for trouble himself. Just let the matter of accepting disciples go as he pleases. Took out the formation disc and handed it to Yan Xiangluo. Here you are, the formation disc I refined last night. Yan Xiangluo said in surprise, it was refined so quickly. She took the formation disc and looked at it. It looked very ordinary and low-key. She used her spiritual sense to check it in. She said in shock, it is twice as far as the transmission distance of my formation disc. Her formation disc was given to her by her sworn brother Ge Tianjun, and the teleportation distance is already very far. Ji Judian nodded, this is the farthest array that I can refine so far. I will give it to you after I refine one that can transmit farther. Yan Xiangluo put it away politely, it's a deal. Ji Zhong is very happy that Yan Xiangluo is not polite to him at all now. In this way, she regards him as her person and a person she can trust, instead of being indebted to each other every time like before. Ji Zhong's eyebrows were filled with a gentle and doting smile, as long as Luoluo likes her, all mine are Luoluo's. Yan Xiangluo's face immediately turned red when she heard this, and she rolled her eyes at him. Since the two of them lifted the veil between them, although she didn't promise him anything, Ji Zhong seemed to be a different person, with a sweet mouth and sweet words. He can speak out at any time, which is completely different from the unsmiling and always cold regent of the Tianshan Empire. The tenderness in Ji Zhong's eyes became even stronger after receiving a roll of his eyes. Qi Hao ran back happily, looking at Yu Xiangluo with bright eyes. Master Yu, have we met for dinner? Having no idea that she had disturbed the sweetness between the two of them. Since eating the meal cooked by Yan Xiangluo last night, Qi Hao has been thinking about breakfast and has become more determined. He must learn to cook well. Eat. Yan Xiangluo patted her face and said quickly. Ji Zhong glanced at Qi Hao and sat down next to Yan Xiangluo naturally. It didn't matter if he didn't accept a disciple, he was a little guy who had no eyesight. Qi Huguang suddenly felt a chill on his back. He looked around and saw nothing. Then he stared at the food on the table again, not knowing that he was already disliked by Ji Zhong. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 338. Chapter 338, Want to be a Gentleman. Wow, it's delicious. I was eating in my dreams last night. Qi Hao made no secret of his love for Yan Xiangluo's cooking. Since eating the food cooked by Yan Xiangluo last night, Qi Hao has been thinking about it and eating the food cooked by Yan Xiangluo all the time in his dreams. Ji Zhong could understand Qi Hao's mood very well. After he ate the food cooked by Yan Xiangluo for the first time, he couldn't eat the food cooked by the royal chef in the palace. It can be said that he has never seen anyone with better cooking skills than Yan Xiangluo. After breakfast, Qi Hao still went to wash the dishes, while Yan Xiangluo and Ji Zhong studied the formation. When normal people awaken their spiritual roots, they need the help and guidance of someone with the same spiritual roots. Most of them are their elders. After all, with the same bloodline, most of the awakened spiritual roots are also the same, which is why most of the awakened spiritual roots of a family are the same. Qi Hao's reason is that the fire spiritual roots are too powerful, and ordinary people cannot awaken them for him, not even his blood relatives. Therefore, Yan Xiangluo thought of using formations to help Qi Hao awaken his spiritual roots. She told Ji Zhong her thoughts. After all, Ji Zhong was also very accomplished in formations. The result of the two people's discussion would definitely be more suitable than hers alone. Sure enough, Ji Zhong helped her perfect the formation, which would ensure that Qi Hao could steadily awaken his spiritual roots, and also ensure that he would have enough spiritual energy to absorb when he awakened his spiritual roots for the first time. After discussing it, Yan Xiangluo set up the spirit enlightening formation in the main courtyard. After the formation was arranged, Qi Changhe also completed his recovery. Pushing the door open and walking out of the room, Qi Changhe looked like an energetic middle-aged man, still looking like he was on the verge of death yesterday. Chi Hao happily jumped over to see his grandfather, who was completely healed. Chi Changhe picked up Chi Hao and spun him around. Both grandfather and grandson felt like they were reborn from the ashes. Chi Changhe put down his grandson, took his hand and came to Yan Xianglou and gave him a big gift. Chi Changhe would like to thank Mr. Yu for saving his life and regenerating his life. Yan Xianglou not only saved his life, but also helped him restore his cultivation. It is not an exaggeration to say that it was a gift of rebirth. Yan Xianglou waved her hand. It's just a transaction. Chi Changhe somewhat understood Yan Xianglou's style of doing things, and he didn't say any more words of thanks. No matter how much he said, it was not as practical as doing one thing. Didn't Mr. Yu want Ningxia grass? He got it for him. Since he was already well, he immediately asked his grandson to take out the shengling fruit, hold it in both hands and hand it to Yu Xianglou. Yan Xianglou was also polite. She deserved it. Put away the spirit ascending fruit. Yan Xianglou pointed at the spirit awakening array. I have set up the spirit awakening array. You can awaken Chi Hao's spiritual roots. After saying that, he and Ji Zhong turned around and left, going back to the courtyard where they lived. Even though they saved Chi Changhe, they still did not interfere in matters like awakening the spiritual roots. It was more appropriate for Chi Changhe, his own grandfather, to complete the matter. The most important thing is that the main reason why Chi Hao has been unable to awaken his spiritual roots is that he carries the inheritance of their Chi family's fire spiritual roots. Neither Yan Xianglou nor Ji Zhong understands the inheritance of their Chi family like Chi Changhe. Therefore, it would be most appropriate for him to be the guardian of Chi Hao's spiritual roots. Even if Chi Changhe were to destroy himself, he would not destroy Chi Hao, the only root of the Chi family. Chi Changhe saw the two people leaving and said to Chi Hao, Xiao Hao, we have met a gentleman. Chi Hao blinked his eyes. So is a gentleman like Mr. Yu. He also wants to be a gentleman. Come, Grandpa will protect you and awaken your spiritual roots. We will have the opportunity to repay Master Yu's great kindness in the future. Chi Changhe took his grandson's hand and walked into the spiritual formation. With such a high-level spiritual formation, Chi Changhe once again lamented that both of their talents were too evil. Although Ji Zhong has been silent and seems to be the master of everything, the aura on his body is stronger than that of the master. Obviously, neither of them is an ordinary person. The two returned to the small courtyard. Yan Xianglou began to study alchemy again, and Ji Zhong began to study weapon refining. He wanted to make a beautiful palace for Yan Xianglou to live in Pangu space. She also needs to make an exquisite kitchen for her. He finally figured it out. Although the little girl was not greedy, she was very particular about her food and would never give in. In fact, monks who have reached their current level of cultivation will choose not to eat human grains in order to prevent the accumulation of impurities in their bodies. Even if they want to eat, they will eat some foods such as spiritual fruits that will not accumulate impurities in their bodies. But he discovered that as long as time allowed, Yan Xianglou would cook and eat by herself. Just like ordinary people who cannot practice, she would eat 3 meals a day. It is not for physical needs, but purely to satisfy the appetite. The most important thing is the food she cooks. After eating it, there will be absolutely no impurities left in the body. Since she likes this kind of mortal life, she will probably cook a lot in the future, so it is very important to have an exquisite and perfect kitchen. Moreover, he also likes to eat the food cooked by the little girl, even though he has no taste for food. However, the required materials for refining the weapon are not complete. He never thought that he would need to refine a tool like a palace building before, but he did not delay thinking about the refining method. The two of them studied each other tacitly, but they didn't find that the tacit understanding between them was very suitable. They obviously didn't get along for a long time, but they knew each other's meaning and thoughts with just one look and movement, as if they had thought about it for many years. Time passed little by little, and noon was here. Yan Xianglou didn't have any clue, playing with the stone nest of the alchemy furnace and muttering, "Is it really difficult?" The stone nest in her hand moved a little, then became quiet again. Yan Xianglou sighed. Although Shiwo could communicate with her using his spiritual consciousness, it never communicated with her unless necessary, and she was used to treating Shiwo as a mute. Ji Zhong heard her muttering and stood up and walked over. "What's wrong?" Yan Xianglou did not hide anything from him. "I have no idea about the god-level elixir. This is the first time I have encountered a bottleneck since I made alchemy. I don't know when I can break through the bottleneck and refine the god-level elixir. The key is that she is in a hurry to leave the Musui continent, and only by refining the god-level elixir can she exchange the Earth-type 5-element beads back. Otherwise, if you miss this opportunity, you won't know whose hands the Earth-element 5-element bead will fall into, and it will be too easy to get it again." Ji Zhong's mouth twitched. "You girl, just tell me, if other alchemists hear this, they will be angry to death. Since you have been refining alchemy, the first time you have encountered a bottleneck is to break through the god-level elixir. Which alchemist can do this? Which alchemist doesn't encounter bottlenecks at every level and is stuck for a long time before breaking through? Even if you are talented, it is impossible to become a 9th level alchemist like her without any obstacles." End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 339. Chapter 339, Eyes Closed. Yan Xianglou raised her head and rolled her eyes at him. "I'm just telling you, but I wouldn't say that to anyone else. I'm not stupid." Ji Zhong laughed. "It's normal to encounter bottlenecks. After all, this is a god-level elixir, the highest level of elixir. If you can achieve it easily, all the alchemists on the mainland will die." Yan Xianglou also knew this in her heart. "I understand. I just want to get the Earth-type 5-element beads as soon as possible. It seems that I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry." Ji Zhong was amused by his somewhat self-deprecating tone, and stretched out his slender hand to rub her hair. "Why is my Luoluo so cute?" Yan Xianglou slapped his hand away. "Who is yours? Besides, she's not a child, so why are you rubbing her head? Her hair is messed up. You are mine, you can only be mine, you will always be mine." Ji Zhong raised his eyebrows and said domineeringly. How could he let go of the person he fell in love with, let alone let others him away? Luoluo could only be his. Although he had only lived for 22 years, this was the first time that he had someone he wanted and someone he liked. It is inevitable that he will win, and he will not let go even to death. Yan Xianglou rolled her eyes at him again. "I am my own." Ji Zhong didn't fight her, and followed her. "Then I'm yours, just yours, and always yours, okay?" Yan Xianglou said with satisfaction. "This is pretty much it?" Ji Zhong's eyes lit up, as if he had found a way to make her happy. Suddenly there was a bang from the main courtyard. The two looked at each other, immediately got up and hurriedly walked out of the small courtyard and went to the main courtyard. They saw Qi Changhe outside the Spirit Awakening Array looking at Qi Hao inside the Spirit Awakening Array with surprise. The awakening was successful. Yan Xiang frowned with a smile on her face. Ji Zhong looked at Qi Hao in the Spirit Awakening formation. The aura on the little man's body had changed. Sure enough, there was still a big gap between monks and ordinary people, especially the talented monks. Although I knew that Qi Hao's fire element talent was very strong, it was still a bit surprising to see him start to advance after awakening his spiritual roots. What kind of family is the Qi family, and how can it have such a strong fire spiritual root bloodline inheritance? Qi Hao was sitting in the Spirit Awakening formation. At this time, he had been promoted to the 3rd level of the sergeant level, but he had not stopped and continued to advance. How many levels do you think he will advance to? Yan Xianglou looked at Qi Hao and asked Ji Zhozhong in a low voice. Those who have just awakened their spiritual roots will be promoted immediately. After all, the rank of knight only means that you are qualified to practice. It is not difficult to advance unless there are some special circumstances, such as Yan Xiangluo's special skills. Therefore, people who have just awakened their spiritual roots will be promoted one after another. The better the talent, the more promotions they will get. Those with ordinary talents are within the third level. After all, they haven't officially started practicing yet. There are those with better talents who have reached the fifth level of the sergeant level, but those with more are extremely rare. At this time, Qi Hao has reached the fifth level as a soldier, but he still has no intention of stopping. Ji Zhozhong also whispered, Qi Hao is special. He is already 9 years old. He is older than those children who have just awakened their spiritual roots. In addition, his fire spiritual roots are too strong. He will break through to level 6 at least, and at most it won't go beyond level 8. Yan Xiangluo's guess is the same. With strong talent and an older age, it is normal for a child with a higher level of breakthrough than an ordinary talented child. Although the conversation between the two was lowered and Qi Hao in the Kailing formation could not hear it, Qi Changhe could hear it. The key was that the two of them did not shy away from him. His eyes flickered. This was also the result he estimated for his grandson. However, he personally experienced the process of his grandson's awakening, and once judged that it was normal. The two of them had just come here. With his judgment so accurate at such a young age, he became a little curious about the identities of the two of them. What kind of family could cultivate such outstanding descendants? Sure enough, Qi Hao stopped advancing after breaking through to the 8th level of the sergeant level. As his advancement stopped, the spiritual enlightenment formation was also broken. Qi Changhe was extremely shocked. Can the formation be set up like this? He has lived for decades, and this is the first time he has seen that the spiritual formation for awakening spiritual roots can be set up like this. He also knows some formations. Although he has not studied and practiced them specifically, he can do some simple formations. Bulletin, but I never knew that the formation could be like this. Did he know that it was the first time that Yan Xiangluo and Ji Zhozhong arranged the formation in this way? It was the result of their research and was also a special arrangement for Qi Hao. The main reason is that Qi Hao's spiritual energy is not enough. This setting can maximize the effect of the formation. At the same time, the formation will automatically break when the promotion stops. In this way, the formation will not suddenly stop absorbing damage because the spiritual energy is too concentrated. People. Qi Changhe has been watching closely because he was worried about this. The main role of the Dharma protector was this. He originally thought that the spirit awakening array was so powerful that he would have to take action, but he didn't expect it to come in handy. Qi Hao opened his eyes, jumped up, somersaulted and landed in front of Qi Changhe. The feeling of spiritual power in his body made him novel and excited. He is no longer a waste who cannot cultivate. He can cultivate his spirit and learn the alchemy he wants to learn. Grandpa, I have awakened my spiritual roots and can practice cultivation. Qi Changhe was also so excited that he almost burst into tears. He patted his grandson on the shoulder and said, "Okay, okay, God has eyes after all." Qi Hao's eyes were also wet. From the age of 3 to now, he knew very well that his grandfather and father had tried many ways to awaken his spiritual roots, but they had failed. He wished that his parents and brother-in-law's family were still alive and could share his joy. Qi Changhe saw his grandson's expression and knew what he was thinking. Hatred is not so easy to erase. The Qi family's revenge must be avenged, but not now. Xiao Hao, kowtow to young Master Yu. You must always remember young Master Yu's great kindness, and never do anything to betray young Master Yu in your life, Qi Changhe said to his grandson very seriously. He knew in his heart that people were willing to help their grandson, not only because of the ascension fruit and pearl grass, but the most important thing was that his grandson fell in love with young Master Yu. Although I don't know what caught my grandson's eye, if my grandson can follow him, it will definitely be the luckiest thing in my grandson's life. Chi Hao was also very grateful to Yan Xiongluo in his heart. Yan Xiongluo was like the sun in his life, illuminating his already gloomy life and warming his cold heart. Therefore, as soon as Grandpa finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Yu Xiongluo and kowtowed sincerely, "Chi Hao, thank you so much for your great kindness, Master Yu." Grandparents and grandson spoke quickly and acted quickly. Yan Xiongluo didn't have time to stop him, so he could only help Chi Hao up. "I am also destined to you, it doesn't have to be like this." Chi Hao stood up, looked up at Yu Xiongluo and said, "No, you can't be ungrateful. Chi Hao will never forget Master Yu's great kindness to me and Grandpa in his life." End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 340. Chapter 340 He Buletin Luqiu. Seeing what Chi Hao said, Yan Xiongluo didn't dwell on the matter anymore. Although it was indeed a transaction at the beginning, in the end, their grandfather and grandson were indeed the beneficiaries, and she did help them, which was worth far more. More than one spiritual fruit. A spirit ascending fruit, no matter how expensive, was not worth the price of one of her elixirs, not to mention the fact that she gave Chi Changhe 2 elixirs and also set up a spirit enlightening array for Chi Hao. Not everyone can arrange this formation, because it is necessary to accurately estimate the talent of the person with awakened spiritual roots and control the spiritual energy in the spiritual formation. The value is no longer comparable to that of their spirit ascension fruit. To be honest, it was indeed their grandparents who took advantage of her. Although she voluntarily helped them, their grandparents knew that she was not helping the wrong person. "Xiao Hao, you have just awakened your spiritual roots. Your grandfather probably still has a lot to say to you about cultivation. We won't interrupt you. I'll go cook while you chat." Yu Xiongluo patted Chi Hao on the shoulder and said. Chi Hao's eyes lit up when he mentioned cooking. He looked at Yan Xiongluo with burning eyes. He had an idea in his mind, but he didn't say it out loud. He had to discuss it with his grandfather first. "Young master, I'm ready. Let me cook the meal." Although Chi Changhe knew about Yan Xiongluo's cooking skills, he was a benefactor and a guest. He couldn't let others cook when he was well. Yan Xiongluo waved her hands and said, "I'm picky, so let me do it. We'll have to worry about it for a few more days. They probably won't leave here until they become god-level alchemists, so they will have to stay at Chi's house for a few days. Cooking is not difficult for her. The most important thing is that her mouth is really sticky and the food tastes bad and she really can't eat it." Chi Hao pulled his grandfather and said, "Grandpa, I will learn to cook in the future, and I will cook it for you." Chi Changhe looked at his grandson and somewhat understood what he meant. "Then there is Mr. Lao. I will go out to buy some vegetables and come back later." He knew that there was nothing at home except a little rice. The rice Mr. Yu used for cooking last night was not the rice from his home. He could eat it. It was spiritual rice, and the vegetables were also spiritual vegetables. Carrying rice and vegetables with you every time you go out shows that your family is very wealthy, so you know that Yan Xiongluo said that she had it in her mouth, which is not self-defeating, it is a fact. Leading his grandson into the main room, he found that as soon as he awakened his spiritual roots, he broke through to the 8th level of the warrior level. Although he has not officially entered cultivation, it can be seen that his grandson's fire spiritual roots are indeed very strong. Anyone who has just awakened his spiritual roots will be very excited and obsessed with cultivation. He must tell his grandson something before he starts practicing independently. Although they are the only two people in the Chi family, their father and grandson are the only ones left, but it is a blessing that God has not cut off the Chi family's fire spiritual root heritage. Yan Xianglue went into the kitchen and started cooking. Although Ji Zhuzhong was not willing to let her cook for others, he would not object openly to what she was willing to do. I am thinking that in order to settle down, I really need to find a good cook. His little girl can cook occasionally, but she can't cook every day. After lunch, Chi Chang he went out. There was nothing at home before because his spiritual roots were almost withered and he had no spiritual power at all. Even those with weak mental strength were not strong enough to take things from the storage ring. Now that his cultivation has recovered, he is naturally not a poor person. He went to buy some spiritual rice and vegetables first. Although their family was not rich enough to eat rice and vegetables every day, now that they were entertaining their savior, he would not be stingy. He could see that the concubine and the young master did not eat anything other than rice and vegetables. Actually, that's because he didn't understand Yan Xianglue. If it was ordinary food that ordinary people ate, as long as it tasted good, she would be happy to eat it. Chi Hao had just awakened his spiritual roots and heard what his grandfather said about the inheritance of the Chi family's fire spiritual roots. After lunch, he couldn't wait to start practicing in the room. He wants to break through to the UN level as soon as possible. Only when he reaches the UN level can he become a true monk and start practicing. And he wanted to break through to the UN level before Mr. Yu left, so that he could be qualified to put forward his ideas. In the afternoon, Yan Xianglue was still studying how to refine God-level elixirs. Ji Zhuzhong did not practice or study weapon refining. After talking to Yan Xianglue, he went out and did not come back until evening. Chi Chang he came back quickly after going out, but he didn't bother Yu Xianglue. He put the spiritual rice, spiritual vegetables, and spiritual animal meat he bought back in the kitchen and went back to his room to practice. He has not forgotten that he still bears the blood feud of his relatives. If possible, he hopes to avenge himself. He does not want his grandson Chi Hao to live in hatred again in the future, let alone be involved in danger. His current cultivation level is at the peak of the 9th level of the clan. The injury this time was extremely serious, and his spiritual roots have almost withered. Master Yu's medical skills are not ordinary, and the effect of the elixir is also particularly good. Not only has his cultivation level not deteriorated, but it has become even stronger. Further, the distance to breaking through to the divine level seems to be within reach. But he knows very well that it is difficult to seize the opportunity to break through to the level, and it also requires a lot of spiritual support to achieve a successful breakthrough. Otherwise, almost all the God-level cultivation masters in the entire continent would not be in Yun's Hang Palace. Just because not all the people in Yun's Hang Palace entered after breaking through to the level, on the contrary, most of them went to Yun's Hang Palace to break through to the level. There is only one reason. The spiritual energy in Yun's Hang Palace is the richest place in the entire continent, because Yun's Hang Palace is the place closest to the 9 heavens. The spiritual energy here is different from the spiritual energy in other places on the mainland. It carries the aura of the 9 heavens. It is easier to achieve breakthrough success. He is not qualified to enter Yun's Hang Palace to break through to the divine level, just because Yun's Hang Palace only recruits monks under the age of 30 who want to break through to the divine level. He is already in his 50s, and Yun Shanggong looks down upon someone with his talent. But in order to avenge the sea, he must break through to the level, so he can only rely on himself. The yard was very quiet. When Ji Zhuzhong came back, it was rare that he didn't see Yu Xiang falling in the kitchen cooking. When he saw the fragrance falling, he realized the reason. This girl must have figured out something and was refining the elixir. Ji Zhuzhong did not disturb her. He went to take a shower and change clothes. When he came out, he saw Yuan Xianglue frowning and looking down at the alchemy furnace. Ji Zhuzhong walked over and stretched out his head to take a look. A smile suddenly flashed across his eyes. Is this a refined poison pill? Yan Xianglue raised her head, glanced at him, and corrected, what I refine is the birth elixir. Ji Kong paused and raised his brows. Birth pill, is this black elixir a birth elixir? Even if he had never seen a birth pill, he knew that the birth pill would not look like this, not to mention that she had recently refined every level of birth pill. End of this chapter.